So this is part 5 of my videos. Today I'm going to talk about my encounters with the light. Just talked about in the last video my encounters with evil, but I'm going to focus on this video my encounters with the light. So I don't know if these experiences are typical. I have described them to several mediums, and I've been given a couple different variations of what this might be, but I can just tell you what I experienced and what I feel it is. So I'm going to start with the first experience. So all the 3 evil encounters had happened several years earlier. This was in 2014, March. I was out back in New England visiting friends, drove up to New Hampshire. At this point, my mother was in assisted living out in Oregon. My brother was taking care of her out there, and drove to New Hampshire. Wanted to get some maple sugar, like you do, and said, well, I would like to visit the cemetery where my grandparents are buried, and I would like to get pictures of that from my mother and pictures of the church she grew up in. So this is a very small town in the western side of New Hampshire. My family apparently founded and settled this town in 1763. And of course, like every good New England settlement, parish, town, same thing. Religion, government, same thing, under the Puritan rules at the time. So anyway, established 2 churches, one in the flatter section of town and one in the center of town. So we drove up and I went to the church. Granted, I had no plan. I had not made any contact. I was just hoping to get some pictures of the church from the outside. So we drive up to the church, and I'm thinking, it'd be nice to get inside, but probably not going to happen. So get out of the car. At the same time we pull in, another car pulls in and stops by the side door in the parish house, community room space. And lady gets out of that car, and so I said, well, perfect opportunity. Everything's lined up. Hopefully there's a reason for this. So I run over to her and I said, explained who I am. I said, my grandfather helped revitalize this church in the 1940s, rebuilt it physically and spiritually, got people to come back to church again. My mother's in assisted living. I would love to get some pictures. Do you mind if I come in and get some pictures inside the sanctuary? Oh, yeah, certainly. Come on in. So we go in with her. And we're touring around the church and getting pictures in the sanctuary, go up to the balcony, go up front to the narthex, and it still had the separate doors for men and women at the time. Of course, they're not used for that anymore. But in the narthex, they had the flower book. So you can give flowers in the name of a relative, and then you pay for them, of course. And the church makes the arrangements. So I saw the book was open, and I said, I'm going to give flowers. I had cash in my wallet for once, and I said, I'm going to donate flowers in the name of my grandparents. So I wrote their names in there in memory of, and I said, by Steve and Mary, and then wrote the date and then wrote the amount. And so I went back to the kitchen and I asked the woman who was in the kitchen organizing some things, and I said, I saw the flower book there. I would like to donate flowers, in the name of my grandfather, and explained who he was. And, oh, yes, 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 I remember him. Know the name very well. Most of the town has the same last name. So I said, well, I've got $50. Is that enough? Oh, yes, that's more than enough money. Don't worry about it. So gave her the money, and we started talking and explaining what I've been told my grandfather did for the church, and she's telling tales. And as soon as I start talking about my grandparents, I get the feeling, and I'm going to describe it. Standing there, and in my mind's eye, I just see this white light, absolute white light. Heaven has been described as, a bright light, so bright you can't look directly at it. Like God, you can't look directly at God. The white light, you can't look directly at it. It's too bright. So I get that in my head, and then it comes right down through the center of my body, from head down to my buttocks, and just starts radiating out. And it felt like this golden warm glow right through my body, and it's starting to push and it's warming up my entire body. And I mean, in my mind's eye, I'm seeing up into the light. And I just felt what everyone describes: perfect love, perfect peace, perfect bliss, tranquility. And I'm just overwhelmed, and I burst into tears. I'm like, and I'm consciously trying to ask, okay, is this grandpa? Is this grandma? Who is this? Who is coming down here? And, I still don't know. I'm assuming it was my grandparents because that's what triggered the experience. So come down, and I am bawling like a 3-year-old in front of this lady, and she's still talking to me like nothing's going on. So a friend who drove me up is standing to the side. I don't know what his reaction was. I'm just bawling, tears flowing, the whole 9 yards. I am a mess, a hot mess at this point. And we're still talking for like 3, 4, 5 minutes. And then, she finally said she needed to get whatever done. And said, okay, thank you so much, appreciate this. And I cried for 20 minutes afterwards in the car. That was my first encounter with the light. So that was a very moving, loving, reassuring experience for me. That yes, I'm being watched out for, and that I'm connected with all my friends and relatives up in the light. So that was the first encounter. Second time it happened, I was at my uncle's funeral in Florida. He was being buried at a military cemetery, national cemetery, and we all gathered. You have to be escorted in to these because it is federal. So we gathered, and then we drive in, escorted to the site where the service is going to be, and then the burial. So we're driving in. I'm in a rental car by myself, and we're driving in, get to almost to where the chapel is, and lo and behold, here we go. The bright light again comes down through me, radiates out, and I burst into tears in the car. And I'm crying the whole way. I'm parking. I sat in the car for about 3 or 4 minutes. Fortunately, no one came up to me to witness me bawling like a child, but I'm sitting there crying. I calmed myself down, got out, and get out of the car, gather with the family, and then they start the service. Some of my cousin's friends were there because they grew up there. And so I was talking to a few of them, and since it was a military honors service, they had the band there playing the trumpet and taps and the whole 9 yards, and did the flag, folding of the flag, and then right in the middle of this, my uncle was a pilot in World War II. Right in the middle of this, a military jet flies over. I'm like, oh, how did they ever arrange that? So I talked to my cousin's friend. I said, did you see that? A plane just flew over. He's like, yeah, I was going to ask you about that. Well, after the service is over, as we're still talking before breaking up, I said, oh, who arranged the plane to fly over? Like, what plane? No one else saw or heard the plane except cousin's friend and me. And said, did you arrange it? It's like, no, we had nothing. We didn't arrange any plane, anything like that. I said, well, a military jet flew over in the middle of the service. No one knew anything about it. So I don't know if that was just lack of sensors. People just didn't notice it because they were concentrating, or it was spiritual. I don't know, but that was an interesting touch to that second encounter with the light. Third encounter, I'm trying to remember where that was, but I know, I think the fourth time, maybe it was the third time, I was at a medium, and I was getting, talking about being a purger and spirit guide, and, giving me some tools, and he's the one that gave me the prayers to use for crossing souls over, and I'm describing this feeling where the white light comes down, and as I'm describing the feeling, it happens again right there in the medium's dining room. So I'm like, I don't know. I said, it's coming on, it's coming on. I'm getting all emotional. I'm starting to cry. And he's trying to figure out what's going on. And he basically says, well, yes, something's coming down. But I think all these spirits that are waiting for you to cross them over are also saying, hey, the door's open. And they're all going up at the same time this is coming down. And you're overwhelmed by all those emotions. I said, well, that makes sense. But I like to think it's just all my loved ones hugging me spiritually and causing me to react like that. But anyway, so that happened then. Um, 2 years ago, I think 2 years ago, typically I go back to Connecticut in December. One of the rituals we always had to do a couple weeks before Christmas, we get the Christmas tree, and then my father would make up swags or buy some wreaths, and we would go to the cemetery and put the swags and the wreaths on the family stones. There were about, I swear there were over 12 of them. Unfortunately, I don't remember where they all were. So I'm left to carry on this tradition from Chicago. So I come out, do a couple things there, some of the fairs and stuff that go on, and then I make sure I decorate the cemetery stones. So 2 years ago, did this, and since both parents have passed, you do get emotional when you're visiting a cemetery. At least I still do. So just part of the experience. But finally, I think I had calmed myself down and accepted the fact, they're gone. I need to, move on. So I was pretty calm the last couple of years going to the cemetery. But 2 years ago, I'm there by myself. I'm putting the jute yarn around the top of the stone to hold the wreaths, one on each side of the stone for each side of the family. And just boom, bam, out of the blue, there's the light again, and I'm bursting into tears while trying to tie knots to get these wreaths to stay on the stone. I'm like, okay. So I'm bawling again, and again, it lasted about 2 to 3 minutes. I said, okay, I need to calm down, I need to pull together here. Okay, I get it, you're with me. So I walked around, did my aunt's, my great aunt's stone, and again, and then wandered around to another relative's stone. This one from Civil War. Obviously, I didn't know them personally, but I knew where the stone was. And again, so as I wandered around the cemetery that morning, it happened 4 times. So someone's saying thank you, someone's saying hello, someone's acknowledging something, but that's when I have felt it. Happened again. Oh, now I know. Third time it happened, I was out. This is during the pandemic. I drove out to a restaurant through the drive-through, got lunch. As I'm in the drive-through, I found out that one of my friend's parents had passed unexpectedly. His mother had passed years ago when we were in high school, and wonderful, wonderful, wonderful woman. And so I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. I tried texting. Of course, obviously they're going to be busy. So I'm driving back to my house, and right in the middle of the main drag, commercial strip here in the Chicagoland area, I had a fear that his father would not cross over successfully because he tended to be a little bit materialistic, and I didn't, especially if it's sudden like that, I didn't think he was going to cross successfully. So I, in the car, say out loud and say, okay, spirit guides, please make sure that he crosses over. And then I said his mother's name out loud. Please make sure he crosses over. And the second I said her name, right in the car as I'm driving back, and I'm bawling again like a child in the car. And I heard very clearly in my head, we have him. We have him. And I'm like, thank you. Now I'm getting the shivers. So heard that in the car, and I'm falling apart. I get home, go back into the garage. As I'm backing into the garage, I hear a very weak voice right here. And I have heard it discussed by mediums that, the recently crossed don't know how things work yet. So if they do come across, it's a very weak, silent energy, quiet energy. So backing in, I hear a very quiet voice whisper, tell my son that I love him. And he used his nickname, which was not well known. And I'm like, and of course I'm burst into tears again. And so I had to make sure that I gave that message to my friend, because obviously it wanted to be shared and it needed to be shared. So that was my third experience with the light. So ever since I've been having these experiences, I've got a lot more confidence. I feel more sure as to what my life's purpose is. Here to cross souls over, but now I make the joke, I've got 1 foot over there and 1 foot over here. I'm like a bridge, telephone line, whatever, like mediums are. They're a bridge between those who've crossed over and those who are still in the physical plane. So it's just very reassuring to me. The love, the respect, I'm not afraid to die. Not that I want to die anytime soon. Hear that? Knock on wood. It's such, I can't even describe the feeling. It's everything that it's described. Perfect love, perfect bliss. You just felt like you're in a warm blanket and everyone's hugging you at the same time. And just for me, I just burst into tears because it's that overwhelming for me. So I hope you get that feeling someday. Yeah, this is my encounters with the light. So hope you enjoy it.